Previously, we have started with the embedded firmware design approaches, and that we have seen one of the approaches, that is superloop based approach, wherein the different tasks or processes will be executed one after the other continuously, and they will be put in an infinite loop. Right? We have seen the applications of that and its advantages, that it requires doesn't require an OS, and also its some of its limitations or drawbacks. Next kind of approach in embedded firmware design is embedded OS based approach or embedded operating system based approach. So this, in this particular approach, we use an operating system, and that operating system, it can either be a general purpose operating system, that is GPOS, or a real time operating system like RTOS or RTOS to host the user written application firmware. So depending on our applications, we can use either of this, that is general purpose OS or real time OS. So the general purpose operating system or GPOS based design is very similar to a conventional PC based application development. Okay, general purpose operating systems are like something like Windows or Unix or Linux, which are used for desktop PCs, right? Where the device contains an operating system, and you will be creating and running user applications on top of it. Okay, on top of operating system, you will be creating and running some user applications or some software. So example of a GPOS used in embedded product development is Microsoft Windows XP Embedded. Okay, that is one example of an general purpose operating system used for embedded product development. Different applications which use this particular OS is like a PDAs, personal digital assistants, okay, handheld devices or portable devices, or point of sale terminals. All this contains this particular operating system. You can also have an example of an ATM, there it is actually a system, computer which is using a general purpose OS like Windows, on which the applications are built. Okay, the use of GPOS or general purpose operating system in embedded products, it merges the demarcation of embedded systems and general computing systems in terms of OS. That means we say when we distinguished between general purpose computing systems and embedded systems, we said general purpose computing systems contains a general purpose operating system, and embedded systems contains may contain or may not contain. If it contains a embedded operating system, right? But if you use general purpose operating systems for embedded products, it's like we are shrinking the differences or demarcation between embedded systems and general computing systems. For developing applications on top of the OS, on top of this general purpose OS supported APIs are used. Okay, similar to the different hardware specific drivers, OS based applications also require driver software. Okay, driver software for different hardware present on the board to communicate with. Just like different hardware specific drivers, OS based applications also require the drivers, for the hardwares which you connect to the embedded systems to run them. We require some driver software for the hardware. Next kind of operating system we have in this particular approach are real-time operating systems. So real-time operating systems we use in those products which need critical time response or real-time response. Okay, so these operating systems, they respond in a timely and predictable manner to the events that are occurring or that are detected. The real-time operating system contain a real-time kernel. In the fifth module, we're actually going in detail with real-time operating system and its functions. Okay, it contains a real-time kernel which is responsible for performing preemptive multitasking in scheduler for scheduling tasks and multiple threads and other things. A real-time operating system, it allows flexible scheduling of system resources like CPU and memory, and offers some way to communicate between tasks. Okay, so it does all these things. It offers some way to communicate between them. It does scheduling, multitasking. Okay, different examples for real-time operating systems are Windows CE, PSOS, VxWorks. These are some real-time operating systems. ThreadX, Micro C or OS2, embedded Linux, Symbian, the operating system which was used in Nokia phones, if you remember, Symbian. These are all examples for real-time operating systems which is used in embedded product development. Examples are mobile phones, PDAs, based on Windows CE or Windows mobile platforms. Handheld devices are examples for embedded products based on RTOS. Most of the mobile phones are built around popular RTOS Symbian. This was prior to the advent of Android or the later operating systems. Then we will look at the different languages which we use in embedded firmware development. For firmware development of embedded systems, we can use either a target processor or controller specific language. This target processor or control specific language, we normally call it assembly language or low level language. Okay. Or you can also use a target processor or controller independent language, that is a high level language like C, C++, Java, and other things. And also you can use a combination of both of this, combination of assembly and high level language. Okay. So we can use assembly language, high level language, or combination of both of them. So we will see assembly language based development. So assembly language is the low level language. It is the human readable notation of machine language. You know what is a machine language? Machine language is something which can be understood by the computer or the processor. Okay, it is in binary. It consists of ones and zeros. Okay, it is made readable by using specific symbols called mnemonics. Mnemonics. You might have used assembly language in your 8051, right? For a group of bits, you assign a particular mnemonic. Hence, machine language can be considered as an interface between processor and programmer. So assembly language and machine languages are processor or controller dependent. It depends on the processor or controller, its architecture, what are the registers it has, and other things, right? And an assembly program written for one processor or controller family will not work with others. It will not work with others. So assembly language programming is the task of writing processor specific machine code in mnemonic form. Okay, in mnemonic form, that is in using the mnemonics for that particular processor or controller, then converting the mnemonics into actual processor instructions. That means converting them into machine language, that is in terms of ones and zeros, and associated data using an assembler. So you use a thing called assembler which does this conversion. So assembly language program was the most common type of programming adopted in the beginning of software revolution. Before high level languages were formed, all the programming was done in assembly language itself. Even today, almost all low level system related programming is still it is carried out using assembly language. So normally for low level interaction between operating system and hardware, like while writing device drivers and all, we use assembly language. General format of an assembly language instruction is we have an opcode followed by operands. Okay, the opcode is, it stands for operational code. It tells the processor or controller what operation has to be performed, right? And operands are the data and information that is required to perform the action specified by the opcode. That means on what things you have to perform the operation, those are called operands. For example, you have this instruction from 8051. Okay, move a comma hash 30. Here move a or move is an opcode. So in 8051 you have a code for move a. That's why move a is the opcode in this case, and hash 30 is the operand. Okay, it's an immediate addressing mode with hash, right? There are different addressing modes again depending on how you are specifying the operands. The same instruction we can write it in machine language, which looks like this: 0 1 1 1 0 1 0 0, then 0 0 0 1 1 1 1 0. So 0 1 1 1 0 1 0 0 is actually the opcode for move a comma something. Okay, move a comma something. It is in binary. It is this particular thing. For this thing, we have made this mnemonic as move a comma hash 30. Hash 30 in case of hexadecimal, it is 1e, right? 30 is 1e, so it is 0 0 0 1 1 1 1 0. 30 in decimal is 1e in hexadecimal, so it is 0 0 0 1 1 1 1 0. This is the operand. Okay, so each line of an assembly language program is split into different fields. 4 fields actually. You have a label. It is an optional thing, you can have it sometimes if you need. Then opcode followed by operand. The comments, this is also an optional thing. So label is an optional identifier used in programs to reduce the reliance on programmers for remembering where data or code is located. You can use this label instead of writing the address. If you cannot remember the address, you can use this label. Why in jump instructions, right? Then this is an example: delay with a colon, then move r0 comma hash 255. This is the opcode operand. Then you write the comment, like what this instruction does. These comments become very useful when the programmer changes, right? if a programmer is doing something, then he leaves the task and gives that task to the other programmer. With the help of the comments, the other programmer or the other users can understand what the program is actually doing. Otherwise, it will become very complex for a second person to read and understand what the program does. So assembly language program written in assembly code is normally saved as .asm, .asm for assembly file, or you can also use .src or .s, okay, as extensions for source files or assembly files. Any text editor you can use like Notepad or Notepad++ or WordPad, from Microsoft, or the text editor provided by any IDE like your Kyle Microvision, right? That is an IDE, example for IDE, that is integrated development environment. We can use that for writing the assembly instruction. Similar to C and other high level language, we can have multiple source files called modules in assembly language programming. More than one assembly files you can have. Each module is represented by an ASM or SRC file. This approach is known as modular programming. Modular means when there is a large task to do, we divide them into different smaller tasks, and uh, the entire code, it is divided into sub modules, and each module is made reusable. It is employed when the program is too complex or too big. So they are usually easy to code, debug, and alter. That means you can find the errors easily. You can just check each smaller codes, find the errors, debug it, and correct it, and reuse it. Okay, you can also change a small part of the program without having to change the entire program, right? So that is one advantage of modular program. So there is a process for conversion of assembly language to machine language. Okay, so you can have, as I've said, more than one programs or one modules. If there are more than one modules, you can have different source files. Source file 1, source file 2, source file 3, multiple files if you have. Okay, so what actually is done is, from the source file, that is from assembly or source file, you are converting that into object file. Okay, first there is a module assembler. The task of this assembler is to convert assembly or source file into object file. Okay, so first source file will be converted to object file 1, then source file 2 will be converted to object file 2. Then this, using the library files, the object files, they are, with the help of a linker or locator, that they are converted to absolute object file. Absolute object file. Okay, absolute object file, uh, which will be later converted to machine code using object to hex file converter. Once you assemble, you get object file as .obj. Then we have to link, because you have different modules, all the modules, they have to be linked together, and an absolute object file has to be created. That absolute object file can be converted to machine code with the help of object to hex file converter. This machine code is also called hex files. Okay, hex files or hex code. So this is the way or process of converting assembly language to machine language. First, it is converted to object files. Then different object files are linked together along with the library files to form the absolute object file. And from that, you get the machine code using object to hex file converter. Okay, object source file to object file translation. Okay, that is done using the module assembler. The translation of assembly code to machine code is performed by assembler. The assemblers for different target machines are different, depending on what target processor you have. You have to use different types of assemblers. A51 macro assembler, that is one of the kinds of assembler from Kyle, is a popular assembler for the 8051 family microcontroller. So this is inbuilt in your Kyle Microvision, that does the assembling task in that. The various steps involved, we have seen in this figure. Each source module is written in assembly and is stored as .src or .s or .asm file. Then they can be assembled separately to examine the syntax errors and incorrect assembly instructions. By checking the errors, you can correct them and again assemble them if at all it is showing any errors. On successful assembling of each .src or .asm, a corresponding object file is created with extension .obj. Extension of each object file will be .obj object file. The object file does not contain the absolute address of where the generated code needs to be placed on the program memory. So hence it is called relocatable segment. Okay, so it can be placed at any code memory, and it is a responsibility of the linker to exactly find where the absolute address of this particular module is. Okay, that linker or locator, what it does is it will create the absolute object. So each module can share variables and subroutines among them. You can use keywords like public or extern when you are sharing the variables and subroutines. Okay, that comes in programming. So then you have to link. After assembling, you get object file. Then you have to link. Okay, library file creation and usage. Libraries are specially formatted, ordered program collections of object modules that can be used by the linker at a later time. Okay, so these are defined, predefined files. So library files are generated with the extension .link. Okay, so you have to invoke this while linking or assembling. So when the linker processes a library, only those object modules in the library that are necessary to create the program are used. It is some kind of source code hiding technique. You're not going to see these codes. You're writing only the assembly code. Okay, you can write some of the extra codes in library and keep it hidden from the end user. For example, lib51 from Kyle is an example for a library creator, and it is used for creating library files for A51 assembler or C51 compiler for 8051 specific controllers. So A51 is the name of the assembler which we use. C51 is the compiler that we use for 8051 controllers. Okay. So then the next process, that is using the library files, we have to link or locate the exact absolute address of where the modules are. The linker and locator, that is the software utility which is responsible for this particular thing. That is for linking the various object modules in a multi-module project. That means which have more than one modules, and assigning an absolute address to each module. What this linker does, it will generate an absolute object module by extracting the object modules from the library, if at all there are any, and those obj files created by the assembler, which is generated by assembling the individual modules of a project, like these files. Okay, more than one object files. So it will link any external dependent variables or functions declared on various modules and resolve the external dependencies among the modules. So if at all you have used some external variables, so it will also link them. An absolute object file or module does not contain any relocatable code. Okay, once it is absolute object file is created, it will not have any relocatable code or data. All code and data reside at fixed memory locations. You cannot alter the locations. The absolute object file is used for creating hex files for dumping into the code memory of processor or controller. From the absolute object file, we create hex files which are put into the code memory. Okay, so BL51 is one example for linker and locator which is used for 8051. Then converting from object to object file to hex file, that is the final stage in conversion of assembly language to machine understandable language, that is machine code. Hex file means it is the representation of machine code that is in hex format. So this file is dumped into the code memory. Dumped means it is saved into the code memory. The hex file representation, again, it varies depending on the target processor or controller MIC. Hex files are ASCII files that contain a hexadecimal representation of the target application. It is created from the final absolute object file using object to hex file converter. Okay, from the absolute object file, you are getting the machine code with the help of object to hex file converter. So OH51, that is one example for object to hex file converter, okay, which is used for 8051 controllers. So what are the advantages of this assembly language based development? It has few advantages, like we can make use of code memory and data memory efficiently. That is efficient code memory and data memory usage. That is memory optimization. We do not write unnecessary codes or unnecessary lines. It is exactly target processor or controller specific. Okay, since the developer is well versed with the target processor architecture and memory organization, you can write optimized code for performing your operations. So this leads to less utilization of code memory and efficient utilization of data memory. Okay, you can make use of code memory and data memory efficiently. Another one is high performance. Since the code is optimized, it will improve the memory, but also it will also improve the total system performance. Okay, through effective assembly coding, optimum performance can be achieved for a target applications. The performance is also increased because you have optimized the memory. Then low level hardware access for most of the code for low level programming, like for drivers or like accessing external device specific registers from OS kernel, device drivers, or low level interrupt routines, okay, which make use of direct assembly code, since low level device specific operation support is not commonly available with high level language compilers. Okay, for high level language, through high level language we cannot access this system low level device supports. For that we have to go for assembly language programming. Next is code reverse engineering. Reverse engineering is the process of understanding the technology behind a product by extracting the information from a finished product. So what reverse engineering means is we are not developing from the scratch, we are getting a product, okay, and then by using some technique you can get the contents of the memory. In the memory you will have things written in machine language. From that we can understand how the things work, or how the program has been written. It is not developing from the scratch but getting a final product, and from that going the reverse way. That is called reverse engineering. So it is performed by hawkers to reveal the technology behind proprietary products. You get some duplicate items of proprietary items, like Apple duplicate Apple phones which are China made. They what they normally do is the same thing. That is reverse engineering. They get the final product and try the other way around. From the product, getting the code and making duplicates of that. So though most of the products employ code memory protection, if you try to break it, if it may be possible to break the memory protection and read the code memory, it can be easily converted into assembly code using a disassembler. That means machine code to assembly code. It is the opposite process of assembling. That is called disassembling for the target mission. Then there are some drawbacks for assembly language based development. That is the high development time. That is one of the things, because it is little harder. Assembly language is much harder to program than high level languages than like C and all, right? The developer must pay attention to more details and must have thorough knowledge of the architecture. Before writing the code, you should know what are the architecture, the memory organization, what are the registers. Only then you can write the program. Learning the inner details of the processor and its assembly instructions is really time consuming, and it creates a delay impact in product development. Okay. Also, more lines of assembly code are required for performing an action, which might be performed by a single instruction in a high level language. Whereas if you want to do that in assembly language, you need more lines of code. So that's why altogether it requires a high development time. One more drawback is developer dependency. As we have seen, each developer, he might have his own way of writing the program in assembly language, and the program will be dependent on the developer. So if a third person or second person comes and tries to find the logic, it will be very difficult for him to take it forward. So unlike high level languages, there is no common written rule for developing assembly language based applications. So the developers will have the freedom to choose the different memory location and registers, right? Also, the programming approach varies from developer to developer depending on his taste. Like moving data from memory location to accumulator can be achieved through different approaches. There are different addressing modes, right? Different ways to write assembly program. It depends completely on the developer. So if the approach done by a developer is not documented properly at the development stage, that means if he has not written the comments and all properly, he may not be able to recollect why this approach is followed at a later stage. Okay, the developer himself might not be able to understand why he has done this without proper documentation. Or when a new developer is instructed to analyze this code, that means if the developer changes, he may not be able to understand what the previous developer has done and why he has done that. So upgrading an assembly program or modifying it on a later stage is very difficult, because it is not so easy like in high level language like C. Another drawback of assembly language based development is it is non portable. That means you cannot port it to other devices, because they are target processor or specific programs. Target applications written in assembly language are valid only for that particular family of processors. Okay. For example, if you say we have written some application for Intel x86 family, it cannot be reused for another target processor, like say ARM family. If the processor changes, then you have to write the entire code Again, a complete rewriting of the application using assembly instructions for the new target processor or controller is required. You cannot use the same code. You have to write the entire code again. Okay. So these are the drawbacks of assembly language based development. Okay, today we have seen the embedded OS based approach in embedded firmware development, and then we have moved on to embedded firmware development languages that we have seen assembly language based development, how assembly programs are written, how it is converted to hex code, then what are its advantages and what are its drawbacks. In the next class, we will see high level language based development, how it is converted to hex code and its advantages and its drawbacks.